I never thought my life would unravel over a simple text message. My husband Ethan's face was ghostly pale as he stared at his phone, his hand trembling slightly. I had just walked through our front door after a long day at the dental clinic, and something was clearly wrong. My name is Harper, and until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. Sure, being a stepmom to a 19-year-old had its challenges, but Jake and I had found our rhythm over the years. At least, I thought we had. "Harper, we need to talk," Ethan said, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. He was still in his work clothes, his usually pristine blue tie loosened around his neck. "It's about Jake." I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter, my stomach already nodding. "What's wrong? Is he okay?" He's fine," Ethan said quickly, running his hands through his graying hair. "But he needs our help. There's this producer in Los Angeles who's interested in his music. It's a huge opportunity, but he needs $15,000. By the end of the week." The amount hit me like a physical blow. 15,000? For what exactly? Ethan paced our kitchen, his shoes clicking against the hardwood floors. "Studio time, production costs. This producer, he's worked with some big names. Jake says it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Something in Ethan's voice set off alarm bells in my head. I'd heard that desperate tone before, usually when he was hiding something. "Have you met this producer? Has Jake sent us any details about the studio?" "Harper, please," Ethan said, stopping his pacing to face me. "This is Jake's dream. We can't let him miss out because we're being too cautious." I opened our refrigerator, mostly to have something to do with my hands. "That's a lot of money, Ethan. Money we set aside for the clinic's new equipment." I know. But Jake's talented. You've heard him play. This could be his big break." I had heard Jake play. He was good, really good. But something about this felt off. "Can I talk to Jake about it? Maybe we could video chat with the producer together?" Ethan's reaction was subtle but telling, a slight stiffening of his shoulders, a quick dart of his eyes toward his phone. "Jake's really stressed about this. He doesn't want too many people involved, doesn't want to spook the producer." "Spook the producer?" I closed the refrigerator door harder than necessary. A legitimate producer wouldn't be spooked by parents wanting to verify an investment in their son's future. "You don't understand the music industry," Ethan snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "I'm sorry, Jake trusts me with this. I need you to trust me too." I studied my husband's face, the face I'd woken up to for the past 7 years. There was something there, something beyond parental concern. Fear, maybe? Or guilt? "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I want to talk to Jake first." Ethan's phone buzzed again. He checked it quickly, his face tightening. "Jake's asking for an answer tonight. The producer has other artists interested." "Tonight?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's not how this works, Ethan. No legitimate business deal works like this. Sometimes you have to take risks for family," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I watched as he walked out of the kitchen, his shoulders hunched, still clutching his phone. The house felt suddenly too quiet, too full of secrets. I pulled out my own phone and opened my messages with Jake. His last text to me was from 3 days ago, a meme about dental hygiene. Nothing about a producer, nothing about needing money. My finger hovered over the call button. Something told me this wasn't really about music at all, and I had a sinking feeling I was about to uncover something that would change everything. I couldn't sleep that night. Around 3 in the morning, I found myself sitting in our home office, staring at the family photos on the wall. One in particular caught my eye, Jake at his high school graduation, Ethan's arm around his shoulders, both of them beaming. I remembered taking that photo, feeling like we were finally becoming a real family. The next morning, I met Lily at our usual coffee spot before work. She was already there, her laptop open, probably working on another one of her true crime podcasts. The moment I sat down, her eyes narrowed. "You look like hell," she said, pushing a coffee toward me. "Spill." I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. "Ethan wants to give Jake $15,000 for some music producer in LA. "Excuse me?" Lily closed her laptop. "The same Jake who borrowed your car last summer and returned it with a mysterious dent?" "The very same." I took a sip of coffee, wincing at the memory. "But this feels different." "You should have seen Ethan last night, Lily. He was practically shaking." "Have you tried calling Jake directly?" 3 times. Straight to voicemail." I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. "But look at this." I opened Jake's Instagram profile. His latest post was from 2 days ago, a video of him playing guitar at some local coffee shop. The comments were full of heart emojis and praise, but nothing about a producer or record deal. "Something's not adding up," Lily said, scrolling through the feed. "And 15,000 is way too much for initial studio time. Trust me, I know plenty of musicians from the podcast circuit." My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Did you think about it? Jake needs an answer today." "God, the pressure they're putting on you," Lily muttered, reading over my shoulder. "Harper, remember when Ethan got weird about those phone calls last year?" I did remember. For about 2 weeks, Ethan had been taking calls in private, always stepping outside or into another room. When I asked about it, he said it was work-related stress. I'd believed him then, but now. "I should get to the clinic," I said, standing up. "I have patients waiting." "Harper." Lily grabbed my wrist. "Promise me you won't write that check without doing some digging first." "I promise." At work, I tried to focus on my patients, but my mind kept wandering. Between appointments, I searched online for music producers in Los Angeles. There were hundreds. Without a name or studio, it was impossible to verify Jake's story. Around lunch, my phone lit up with a text from Jake. "Hey Harper, Dad told you about the producer thing? It's legit, I swear. This could change everything for me." I stared at the message. It was the first time he'd reached out directly about the money. Something about the timing felt calculated. I typed back, "Can we video chat about it? I'd love to hear more details." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "In meetings all day. But trust me, okay? You've always supported my music." That hit hard. I had always supported his music. I'd been at every local show, helped him buy his first electric guitar, even convinced Ethan to let him defer college to pursue music. But this felt like manipulation. As I was about to respond, my receptionist knocked on my office door. "Dr. Winslow? There's a man here asking for you. Says his name is Marcus Reed." I froze. I'd heard that name before, Ethan's old friend from college. They'd had some kind of falling out years ago, but Ethan never told me why. "He says it's about your husband," my receptionist added, looking concerned. My heart started racing. Marcus showing up now couldn't be a coincidence. I glanced at my schedule, 2 more patients before my afternoon break. "Tell him I can meet him in 45 minutes, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's a coffee shop across the street." As my receptionist left, I looked down at my phone again. Jake's message stared back at me, along with Ethan's earlier text, demanding an answer. Whatever was really going on, I had a feeling Marcus Reed was about to blow it wide open. Marcus Reed wasn't what I expected. He sat across from me at the coffee shop, methodically stirring his Americano. Looking more like an accountant than someone carrying explosive secrets. His tie was perfectly knotted, his shirt crisp, but his eyes held something heavy. "I've been debating whether to come forward," he said, placing an envelope on the table between us. But when I heard about Jake asking for money, I knew I had to act. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter dated 3 years ago, before Jake had even moved in with us. The paper was creased, worn at the edges, like it had been read many times. "Ethan," it began, "the debt collectors are getting aggressive. I can't cover for you anymore. Either pay what you owe, or I'll have to tell them everything." The coffee shop's ambient noise faded away as I read further. Numbers jumped out at me: 40,000 in gambling debts, threats of exposure, desperate promises to pay. My stomach lurched. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Marcus leaned forward. "Because Jake found out about it 6 months ago. He's been using it to manipulate Ethan ever since." The pieces started falling into place: Ethan's mysterious phone calls last year, his increasing anxiety, the way Jake had suddenly become more demanding. I thought about the dent in my car, the missing money from our vacation fund that Ethan had blamed on bank fees. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jake: "Did you make a decision about the producer? Time's running out." "There is no producer, is there?" I asked Marcus. He shook his head. "Jake's talented, but he's also his father's son. He learned manipulation early." "Does Ethan know you're here?" "No." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing me a series of texts. "But Jake does. He's been threatening to expose Ethan's gambling past to you for months." "The 15,000? That's just the latest demand." I stood up abruptly, needing to move. "I need to get back to work." "Harper," Marcus called after me. "There's something else you should know. The gambling didn't stop 3 years ago." I froze. "Check your joint accounts," he said quietly. "Especially the clinic's investment fund." The walk back to my clinic felt like moving through fog. I pulled up our banking app, hands shaking so badly I had to try the password twice. The investment account balance loaded: $3,247. Last month it had been over 20,000. My receptionist looked alarmed when I burst through the door. "Dr. Winslow? Your next patient." "Cancel the rest of my appointments," I managed to say. "Family emergency." I drove home in a daze, Marcus's letter burning a hole in my purse. When I walked in, I found Ethan and Jake in the living room, heads bent together over Jake's laptop. They jumped apart when they saw me. "Harper?" Ethan's face went pale. "Why are you home early?" "I had an interesting conversation with Marcus Reed today," I said, watching their reactions. Jake's face hardened, but Ethan looked like he might be sick. "Whatever he told you," Jake started, but I cut him off. "Stop." My voice was ice. "The producer story? That's over. What I want to know is how long you've been blackmailing your father." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's confident facade cracked, just for a moment, showing something that looked almost like relief. Ethan sank onto the couch, head in his hands. "Harper, please," he whispered. "I can explain everything." "Can you explain the empty investment account?" I pulled out my phone, showing them the balance. "Can you explain why our 19-year-old son is extorting money from us?" "I never meant," Jake began, but stopped when I held up my hand. "I'm going to stay with Lily tonight," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "When I come back tomorrow, I want the truth. All of it. No more lies, no more manipulation." As I turned to leave, Ethan called out, "I love you." I paused at the door, not looking back. "Love without trust isn't enough, Ethan." It never was. Lily's guest room felt like a sanctuary and a prison all at once. I lay awake, scrolling through years of photos on my phone, looking for signs I might have missed. There were hundreds of pictures of our happy little family, holidays, birthdays, Jake's music recitals. All of them lies. My phone lit up with another text from Ethan: "Please come home. We need to talk." I switched it off and headed to the kitchen, where Lily was already making coffee, despite it being 5 a.m. "You know what's weird?" I said, accepting a steaming mug. "I keep thinking about Jake's 18th birthday. The one where Ethan bought him that ridiculously expensive guitar?" "Yeah. Ethan said it was from his bonus at work. I traced the rim of my mug. We had to postpone our trip to Europe because of it. Lily's eyes narrowed. You think that money came from gambling? Before I could answer, my work phone buzzed, the emergency line for the clinic. A familiar number flashed on the screen. Marcus? I answered, confused. Don't react, he said quickly. Jake just left my house. He's been trying to get me to falsify some documents about Ethan's old debts. He's planning something big. My hand started shaking. What kind of documents? Bank statements, loan agreements. He wants to make the gambling debts look worse than they were. Harper. I think he's trying to force Ethan into selling the house. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on Lily's kitchen floor. She jumped up, grabbing paper towels, but I barely noticed. The house is in my name, I said. Ethan can't sell it without my signature. Check your email, Marcus replied. Jake sent me some paperwork he found. There's something you need to see. I opened my laptop with trembling fingers, finding Marcus's email. Attached was a scan of a power of attorney document, with my signature on it. Except I'd never signed it. That's not my signature, I whispered. I know, Marcus said. But it's a good forgery. Jake's been planning this for months. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence while Lily cleaned up the broken mug. My mind raced through possibilities, calling the police, confronting Jake, exposing everything. But something held me back. I need to go to the clinic, I said suddenly. Harper, it's not even 6. The patient files, I cut her off. If Ethan's been gambling again, he might have. I couldn't finish the sentence. Lily grabbed her keys. I'm driving. The clinic was dark and quiet when we arrived. With shaking hands, I logged into the accounting system. Screen after screen of transactions appeared, regular payments to suppliers, staff salaries, equipment leases. And then I saw it, dozens of small transfers to an unfamiliar account over the past year, each labeled as equipment maintenance. $100 here, $200 there, Lily murmured, looking over my shoulder. Small enough not to raise red flags. He's been stealing from my patients, I said, my voice hollow. Using their payment plans to fund his gambling. My phone buzzed again. Jake, this time, we need to talk. Alone. No dad, no cops. Or everything goes public. Lily read the message and grabbed my arm. Harper, this is blackmail. You need to call the police. But I was already gathering my things. If this gets out, I'll lose my license. The clinic will be investigated. My patients. So what's your plan? I pulled up Jake's contact and typed, the coffee shop. 1 hour. I'm coming with you, Lily insisted. No. I touched the forehead of a smiling photo of Jake from his graduation. He's still my stepson. And I need to know why. As I drove to the coffee shop, my mind kept circling back to all those family photos. The signs had been there, the mysterious expenses, the secretive phone calls. The tension between father and son that I'd attributed to normal teenage rebellion. I'd been so focused on building the perfect family that I'd missed the cracks in the foundation. Now it was time to face the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. Jake was already waiting at the coffee shop when I arrived, his fingers drumming against a laptop. He looked so young sitting there, barely out of high school, yet somehow he'd orchestrated this whole scheme. I had the forged power of attorney, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. And I know about the clinic's accounts. His fingers stopped drumming. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of uncertainty in his eyes, before his confident mask slipped back into place. Dad's gambling again, he said, opening his laptop. But that's not even the worst part. He turned the screen toward me, showing a series of email exchanges. He's been borrowing money from some dangerous people. They're threatening to come after all of us. So this was never about music? The music was real. His voice cracked slightly. I just needed leverage to force him to stop. The $15,000? That was to pay off the most aggressive collector. I studied his face, looking for any trace of the boy who used to play guitar in our backyard. Why forge my signature? Why steal from the clinic? Because Dad wouldn't stop. Jake's composure finally broke. I tried everything else. Threatening to tell you, hiding his phone, even changing the passwords on his accounts. Nothing worked. A waitress approached our table, but I waved her away. You could have come to me directly. Like you came to me about selling my mom's house? The accusation hit like a physical blow. What? Jake pulled out another document. 2 months ago, Dad took out a loan against Mom's house, the one she left me in her will. He forged my signature, just like I forged yours. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? My hand started shaking. The house had been Jake's inheritance from his mother, who died when he was 12. We'd agreed to keep it as a rental property for Jake's future. Does Marcus know about this? Marcus? Jake laughed bitterly. Marcus is the one who arranged the loan. He's been enabling Dad's gambling for years, taking a cut of every loss. My phone buzzed. Ethan again, where are you? Marcus just called. Whatever Jake's telling you, it's not the whole truth. Show me proof, I told Jake. About the house, about Marcus, all of it. He pulled up document after document, loan agreements, threatening emails, bank statements showing massive transfers to offshore accounts. Each revelation felt like another crack in the foundation of my life. What do you want? I finally asked. I want control of both houses, mine and yours. Put them in a trust that Dad can't touch. Help me get him into rehab, real rehab this time. And? He hesitated. I want you to press charges against Marcus for fraud. And if I don't? Jake's expression hardened. Then everything goes public. The forged signatures, the stolen clinic money, all of it. You'll lose your license, Dad will probably face charges, and those collectors will come after whatever's left. My phone buzzed again, Lily this time. Police just called the clinic. Someone reported financial irregularities. They want to see the books. The room started spinning. Years of building my practice, my reputation, my family, all of it balanced on the edge of a knife. And my 19-year-old stepson held the blade. You're just like him, I said quietly. Jake flinched. I'm nothing like him. I'm trying to save this family. By destroying it? By forcing everyone to face the truth. He closed his laptop. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. After that, I can't control what happens. I stood up, my legs barely supporting me. You already lost control, Jake. The moment you decided to become the thing you hate. As I walked out, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from Marcus, meet me at the clinic. There's something about Jake you need to know. The morning sun felt too bright, too harsh. I had less than 24 hours to choose between protecting my stepson and saving my husband, between my profession and my family. Between truth and survival. And somehow, I suspected every choice would be wrong. The clinic's parking lot was empty except for Marcus's sleek black car and a police cruiser. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the officer through the window, talking to Lily at the front desk. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Marcus stood in my office doorway, his perfect composure finally showing cracks. I had to report the irregularities, he said quietly. Jake gave me no choice. Like you had no choice when you helped Ethan gamble away his son's inheritance? He flinched. That's what Jake told you. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing me a series of screenshots. Look at the timestamps. The loan against Jake's house? It wasn't Ethan who arranged it. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. They were from Jake to various loan sharks, dating back months before the gambling resumed. He'd been setting this up all along. Jake's been playing both sides, Marcus continued. He arranged the loans himself, forged Ethan's signature, then used the debt to manipulate him back into gambling. The guilt drove Ethan right where Jake wanted him. Why would he? Because of this. Marcus handed me a worn envelope. Inside was a letter from Jake's mother, dated just before her death. It revealed the truth about Jake's inheritance. The house had been mortgaged to pay off his mother's own gambling debts. There was nothing left to inherit. Jake blamed Ethan for keeping this from him, Marcus said. This whole thing? It's not about saving anyone. It's about revenge. The police officer appeared in the doorway. Dr. Winslow? We need to discuss some financial discrepancies. My phone buzzed. Ethan, Jake just showed up at the house. He's threatening to hurt himself. Please come home. The room started spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my family was unraveling. Jake wasn't trying to save his father, he was systematically destroying him. And I'd played right into his hands. I have to go, I told the officer. My stepson. Dr. Winslow, he cut me off firmly. We have evidence of systematic fraud. You're not going anywhere. Marcus stepped forward. Officer, I can explain the discrepancies. I'm the one who. Don't, I whispered. The truth hit me like a physical blow. You're trying to protect them both, aren't you? That's why you came forward about the clinic. He met my eyes. Someone has to stop this cycle. My phone buzzed again, Lily this time. Jake posted everything online. The forged documents, the clinic records, everything. It's already spreading through local news. The officer was saying something about formal statements and potential charges, but his voice seemed distant. Through my office window, I could see news vans pulling into the parking lot. I trusted them, I said to no one in particular. I tried to help them. Sometimes, Marcus replied quietly, the people we try to save are the ones who destroy us. My phone lit up one final time, a text from Jake, I warned you what would happen. Now everyone pays. The officer stepped closer, pulling out his handcuffs. In that moment, I realized the true cost of trying to protect my family. I'd lost my practice, my reputation, possibly my freedom. And for what? To save two men who'd been plotting against each other, and me, all along? Marcus touched my arm gently. There's still a way to fix this. But you'll have to be willing to sacrifice something bigger than yourself. I looked at him, then at the officer, then at my phone with its endless stream of devastating messages. 7 years of marriage, of trying to be the perfect wife and stepmother, of building a life on what I now knew were carefully constructed lies. Okay, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll tell you everything. About Jake, about Ethan, about the money. But first, there's something you need to know about what really happened the night Jake's mother died. Marcus went pale. Apparently, there were still some secrets even he didn't know. The police let me make one call before taking me in. I chose Ethan, not because I trusted him anymore, but because I needed him to understand what was coming. Jake's mother didn't die in an accident, I said the moment he answered. And I can prove it. Silence filled the line. Then, barely audible, come home. Now. The officer agreed to escort me, probably hoping I'd lead them to more evidence. When we pulled up to the house, Jake's car was in the driveway, next to Ethan's. My hands trembled as I unlocked the front door. They were both in the living room. Jake sat on the couch, his usual confidence replaced by something raw and desperate. Ethan stood by the window, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Tell them what you told me, Jake said to his father, his voice breaking. About the night Mom died. Ethan's shoulders sagged. I can't. Then I will. I pulled out my phone, opening an email I'd received years ago, but never mentioned. Your mother sent this to my personal account the night she died. I was her dentist, remember? She trusted me. Jake's eyes widened. What? She knew about the gambling, Jake. Not just hers, yours too. You were 16, stealing from her accounts to place bets online. She confronted you that night. Stop, Jake whispered. The accident wasn't an accident. She was driving to the police station to report both of you. You and Ethan were following her car. Ethan turned from the window, his face ashen. Harper, please. The truth, Ethan. For once. My voice was steady now. You both saw her car go off the road. And you both kept driving. The police officer stepped forward, but I held up my hand. That's not even the worst part. Tell him, Ethan. Tell Jake what happened to his inheritance. The house was already mortgaged, Jake said bitterly. Mom's gambling debts. No. I looked directly at Ethan. The house was paid off. Your father mortgaged it the day after she died, to pay off your gambling debts. Both of yours. Jake stood up so quickly, the coffee table overturned. You said it was her debt. You let me blame her all these years. I was protecting you. Ethan shouted back. You were falling apart after she died. I couldn't let you know that your gambling helped drive her to that night. So you let me blame her instead? Let me hate her? Enough. My voice cut through their argument. You've both been playing the same game. Using guilt to manipulate each other, using me to cover your tracks. But guess what? I'm done being your shield. I turned to the officer. I have documentation of everything. The original mortgage papers, the email from Jake's mother, bank records showing both their gambling activities. And yes, proof of the clinic fraud, which they both committed using my passwords. Harper, Ethan stepped toward me, but I backed away. I loved you both, I said quietly. But love without truth is just another form of manipulation. Jake sank back onto the couch, all his schemes finally crumbling. What happens now? Now? I looked between them, my husband and stepson, both trapped in a web of their own making. Now we all face the consequences. Starting with the truth about that night. The officer moved forward, reading them their rights. As he led them out, I noticed Jake's guitar in the corner, covered in dust. All his talk about music, about needing money for producers, just another lie in a house built on deception. My phone buzzed one last time. Lily, Marcus turned himself in. Said he's ready to tell everything. I watched the police cars pull away, carrying the remains of my family with them. The truth hadn't set any of us free, but at least it had stopped the cycle of revenge. Sometimes, I realized, that's the best kind of justice we can hope for. The house keys felt heavy in my hand as I locked up for the last time. Tomorrow, there would be questions, investigations, probably trials. But tonight, in the growing darkness, I finally felt something I hadn't in years: peace. 6 months later, I sat in the visitor's room at the county jail, watching Jake fidget with his sleeve across the table. He looked younger in his prison uniform, more like the teenager who used to play guitar in our backyard. The therapy's helping, he said quietly. Both kinds. Gambling addiction and the other stuff. I nodded, placing a manila envelope on the table. Your mother's full letter. I think you're ready to read it now. His hand shook as he opened it. I'd only shown the police the relevant parts about that night, but the rest, her love for him, her fear for his future. Her own struggles with addiction, that belonged to Jake alone. Marcus visited last week, he said, carefully folding the letter without reading it. Said you're buying the clinic back. The board reviewed the case. Since I reported the fraud myself and cooperated fully, they're letting me restore my license. With conditions. Jake met my eyes for the first time. Dad told me about the music therapy program you're starting. For addiction recovery. It seemed right. I smiled slightly. Sometimes the best revenge against our past is helping others avoid the same mistakes. The guard signaled our time was almost up. Jake stood, then hesitated. Harper? That night, when Mom. I'd been wanting to ask. Did you know all along? I suspected. The email gave me leverage when I needed it, but I took a deep breath. We all have secrets we keep thinking we're protecting someone else. He nodded, understanding the weight of what wasn't said. As the guard led him away, I noticed he was humming, something original, not the covers he used to play. Outside, Lily was waiting in her car. Ready for the hearing? As I'll ever be. The courthouse was packed for Ethan's sentencing. He'd taken a plea deal, admitting to everything except his direct role in his first wife's death. Some truths were better left to conscience than courts. Marcus was there too, looking uncomfortable in a suit. After his testimony had helped convict several loan sharks, he'd been granted immunity. The community music program had been his idea, a way to make amends. The defendant may rise, the judge announced. Ethan stood, shoulders straight. When he turned to face me, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Not just for the crimes, but for the years of lies that had poisoned everything we'd built. Later, walking through the park where Jake used to practice his music, Lily asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you regret turning them in? I watched a family playing frisbee, their laughter carrying across the grass. I regret not doing it sooner. Before revenge became the only language we all understood. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, board approved the music therapy funding. When do we start? Something lightened in my chest. The clinic would reopen next month, with a new mission and stricter oversight. The therapy program would help people like Jake, like Ethan, like Jake's mother, people trapped in cycles of addiction and deceit. You know what's weird? I told Lily. I kept trying to save my family, but I couldn't see that sometimes saving people means letting them face consequences. And sometimes, she added, it means saving yourself first. That evening, I found Jake's old guitar in my storage unit. The strings were dusty, but the wood still gleamed. In 2 years, he'd be eligible for parole. Maybe by then, the therapy program would be ready for its first music teacher. I placed the guitar in my car, next to a stack of patient files and program proposals. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rebuilding my practice, establishing the therapy program, learning to trust again. But for now, I sat in the quiet car and played the few chords Jake had taught me, letting the simple melody wash away the last echoes of revenge. My phone lit up one final time, an email from Jake's mother's old account, scheduled years ago. Thank you for being the truth teller I couldn't be. Sometimes, I realized, the greatest act of love isn't protection or revenge. It's simply being brave enough to face the truth, no matter the cost.